that we see running in now. Than those by night. The Allies would carry some heavy armament on the bombers to fend off the fighters. The enormity of the Allied heavy bomber offences, not just the B-17s, but also the B-24 Eliminators, the Lancasters, the Halifaxes, the Sterlings and so forth, is hard nowadays to take in. They were enormous mass formations, and the odds were not in favour of their use. In the first year of operations by the 8th Air Force in 1942-43, just 36% of heavy bomber airmen had a chance of completing their tour of 25 missions. It's no wonder that B-17 Sally B, the sole airworthy example of the type in Europe, is so revered as a flying memorial. No wonder it's so important that Ellie Sallingbow and her team from B-17 Preservation Limited, based here at Duxford, keep it flying with your enthusiastically received support. Of course, it was soon discovered that the B-17, despite being a veritable flying fortress, as its name suggests, with a very large number of machine guns for defensive armament, was still at the mercy of attacks by German fighters. And it was when longer-range escort fighters came in with the US Army Air Force, the P-38 Lightning first, followed by the P-47 Thunderbolt, and then the P-51 Mustang, that it truly changed the course of that bomber offensive. And here we see the two little friends, the two Mustangs, forming up on B-17 Sally B. And here, as if attacking a Luftwaffe airfield, we've got the two buchons getting airborne, representing service was concerned. The early experience with the type in Europe showed that it needed better defensive armament, a bigger bomb bay, better bomb aiming equipment. The main tactic of the 8th Air Force, as I said, daylight raids against German industrial facilities and transport and resupply networks like the likes of marshalling yards and railway junctions. And the conditions on board the B-17s and B-24s at altitude were pretty hellish, it has to be said. Noisy, cold, little armour plating or protective personal equipment, to say nothing of that ever-present threat of enemy action. But what was it like to be on the other end of a raid by a B-17? Well, Fritz Eichel was a teenager at the time, manning.
I mean, that must have been really something to put some information, all this kind of thing. I had a great admiration really for that kind of thing. Because I mean, it must have been terrible to fly like this. We saw the stripes right there. They were so high, you know, they had those long stripes all over the place, like, you know. I remember when American Airways was, I think, the 20s, those June 1944. They thought they were flying to Leipzig and Dresden or somewhere there to the south. But suddenly, I said, turn on, got to Berlin. You saw all these stripes right there, going all over.
Final pass from Sally B with smoke on, in salute to the members of the Sally B Supporters Club and also all of the men of the US 8th Air Force. developing a typical late war dogfight, with the two buchons being in due course hotly pursued by the pair of mustangs. How the Mustang came about is a really remarkable one, with a huge British element. The British Purchasing Commission in the United States, which was set up to procure American war material for British use, was headed up by a man called Sir Henry Self. He was a civil servant, incidentally also the grandfather of the author Will Self. They hit upon the idea of procuring more Curtiss P-40s to equip the RAF. But North American aviation felt that it could do better. It came up with the NA-73 design, which duly became the Mustang. Initially it was powered by an Allison engine, and although the aircraft was extremely manoeuvrable and could perform at low level, at altitude it wasn't so hot. An example was tested by the Air Fighting Development Unit, an evaluation unit based here at RAF Duxford in April 1942 by a Rolls-Royce test pilot named Ronald Harker. He thought that the combination of the Mustang with the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine would be an outstanding one. How right it was. It was October 1942, the air showed its potential. Touching down in the hands of Peter Cowpers and Bill Tollett is B-17 Sally B, in front of us here at the control tower, as if representing the crew of a B-17 who've sweated out the mission, waiting for their bomber to come home. We have a group of uniformed personnel. And well might they applaud. Back though to the Mustang, Air Fighting Development Unit test pilot Len Thorne was involved in the trials at Duxford. He described how the Mustang matched up to the Spitfire.
They had roughly the same both get to about 40,000 feet and still remain operationally viable. The Mustang can certainly outdive the Spit. I'm not quite sure about climbing. I think they were fairly close. Rate of roll, the Mustang, I think, had a slightly better rate of roll than the Spit. But there wasn't a lot to choose between. The big
crucial to the success of the D-Day invasion. In fact, the Luftwaffe was barely active on D-Day. The US T-38, T-37, especially the P-51s, were able to range deep into occupied Europe, not least on bomber escort missions. Some of those P-47s and P-51s were of course contributed to the overall effort by the Duxford-based 78 fighter group, which arrived here with P-47s in early 1943, and you can see one of those aircraft in the American Air Museum, later converted to the P-51, and likewise there's a Mustang in 78 fighter group colours inside the American Air Museum. Well, Huey Lamb is the man in whose marking that aircraft appears. He's been here to Duxford to see the machine in those colours. And here, Huey describes his first encounter with the enemy.
Attacking the bombers. We was on an escort mission, and we were probably around 28,000 feet. And I looked up there, and there was what we call a gaggle of fighters. A gaggle of formation, flying like birds, flock of birds. And looking around, the last person over here was just telling Charlie, here was an ME-109 firing at me. I could see the flashes of the guns. So I immediately called brake right, and I broke around to get on his tail. And he dropped his gear and his flaps. And of course, I was like this, and I had to pull up to avoid getting in front of him. He probably thought I'd get in front of him, that he could, follow me. And I pulled up, and my flight leader came around and shot him down. Throttle back so I could do more or less his speed and was able to get behind him. If I hadn't had this before, I'd have probably overshot him also. If that happened, it was said if you can survive 10 combat missions, it's probably going to be okay to make one tour. Because the first 10, we learn a lot. You learn a lot on every mission, especially the first 10.
There on the big screens, Lieutenant Huey Lamb at Duxford a couple of years ago, talking about his time with the 78 Fighter Group. Huey, one of the personal stories told in the redeveloped American Air Museum.